too will look at both exotic and common fish. Paul gives advice that is useful to the novice and veteran alike, so you won't feel like a fish out of water. Don't miss the Aquatic Maestro, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. and Saturdays at 9 a.m. on Heritage Cablevision Channel 32.
Congressional budget cutters are again aiming their sights at the B-2 stealth bomber. Freed hostage Jesse Turner is looking toward home. He is bound for Boise. And the man who shared his vision of the 23rd century makes his final voyage. CNN Headline News, I'm Lynn Vaughn. Those stories coming up, but first, a 2-year stalemate on civil rights legislation is over. Just minutes ago, Senate Democrats announced they have accepted a compromise version of the bill. The accord was hammered out during a nighttime session between Senate negotiators and the White House. And after a morning caucus, Democrats gave it their endorsement. President Bush also likes the final result.
Administration relented. They finally stopped playing the quota card. I think President Bush deserves credit for rejecting, at long last, the advice of those who've been urging him to divide the nation over race. We gave up nothing of any significance on the quota debate. Our bill never was a quota bill.
One of the biggest sticking points had been anti-discrimination provisions in the bill. President Bush twice vetoed similar measures, saying they would promote quotas, but the disputed language was modified to the liking of both sides. Mr. Bush will have even more to say in a moment, or rather he will have something to say in just a moment. He has scheduled a news conference for about 15 minutes from now, and we'll have an update on the half hour. Congress will soon be deciding the fate of the Pentagon's budget. One big-ticket item likely to be on the chopping block is the B-2 stealth bomber. Wolf Blitzer examines the possibilities.
The U.S. Air Force's B-2 stealth bomber was originally conceived to elude radar during missions deep inside the Soviet Union. Their proposed targets were mobile nuclear missiles. But with U.S. President George Bush proposing and Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev agreeing to keep those missiles inside garrisons, that threat may no longer exist.
You're going to get a combination of people who think that we don't need it with the end of the Cold War, and there'll be another group who think we can't afford it, given the fact that it's already close to $1 billion a copy before it had test problems, and we don't know how much it's going to cost to fix those.
This thinking once again raises questions whether the radar-evading plane can evade congressional budget cutters when, in the coming days, a joint House-Senate conference committee meets to decide its fate. Indeed, there has been mounting speculation on Capitol Hill that the Pentagon may be willing to sacrifice the B-2 in exchange for more funding for the Strategic Defense Initiative, the so-called Star Wars program. The Pentagon denies any such intention.
We remain firmly committed to both the B-2 and SDI. The idea that we're going to somehow trade one for the other is absolutely not true.
General Merrill McPeak, the Air Force Chief of Staff, also insists that the B-2 remains a top priority even after the Cold War.
It is exactly the kind of program that a much smaller Air Force of the future has to have in order to make the important contribution we must make to national security.
He and other Air Force officials insist that the B-2, despite its estimated $865 million per plane price tag, can also play an essential conventional role. So far, Congress has approved funding for only 15 B-2s. The Pentagon says it needs 75. But already, some observers suggest that it may be willing to settle for 35, if that's the price necessary to keep the program alive. Wolf Blitzer, CNN, the Pentagon.
Freed hostage Jesse Turner is homeward bound. He, his wife, and daughter are expected to arrive in Boise, Idaho late tonight after a couple of stopovers. This morning, Turner checked out of the Hostage Hotel, better known as the U.S. Army Hospital in Wiesbaden, Germany. Turner hasn't said much publicly about his years as a captive in Lebanon. He was released Monday. The longest-held Western hostage in Lebanon, Terry Anderson, is receiving some early birthday greetings. His sister, Peggy Say, has written a letter that was published in Beirut newspapers today. She writes, Anderson's family is still basking in the glow of his robust health, as depicted in the most recent videotape released by his kidnappers. Anderson turns 44 on Sunday. He has spent 6.5 years in captivity. France and Belgium are advising their citizens living in Zaire to leave. Half of the 10,000 Belgians in Zaire have left since army-led riots broke out 1 month ago. Riots and looting in Zaire's capital continue. Anti-government protesters burned another home belonging to the country's president today. The latest riots were staged after an opposition leader was fired as prime minister. The latest hopes for an end to Yugoslavia's civil war have been shot down yet again. Today, the president of Serbia rejected a European community-sponsored plan to reorganize the country into a looser association of 6 republics. He says it would only produce new instability and tension for Yugoslavia's citizens. The secessionist Republic of Croatia is still under attack from the Serbian-led National Army. Towns near the Croatian capital of Zagreb are coming under heavy mortar fire. The historic coastal city of Dubrovnik is also a target. The first Eastern European nation to puncture the Iron Curtain holds its first free parliamentary election Sunday. But, as Anna Maria Tremonte reports, some people in Poland are not electing to participate.
By most standards here, Zofia Usidis should be happy. The upholstery factory where she works has avoided crippling layoffs. Grimy old looms are being replaced with computerized machinery, and a new boss has big plans to lure Western investment. But Zofia is disillusioned by all the changes, and Sunday, she won't even bother to vote. I lived better under the communists than I do now, she says. The new government promised us we'd be another Japan, but she says she still can't afford anything. Łódź is an industrial city where 90,000 textile workers have lost their jobs in a country where the switch to democracy has meant painful economic changes. And so the campaign for this Sunday's first free parliamentary elections, the first with no reserved seats for the communists, is getting mixed reviews. It's our civic duty to vote, he says. Every Pole should vote. I don't trust anyone anymore, she says. She doesn't know if she'll vote. There are 300 parties in this election. A number of them are offshoots of Solidarity. Many others are fringe parties. 30% of the voters are still undecided, and Poland's chief electoral officer says the process is so confusing, only about 4% of the people even know how to mark the ballots. The confusion and the disenchantment has kept people away from political meetings. Former Prime Minister Tadeusz Mazowiecki is so worried about a low voter turnout that he opened a rally for his Democratic Union Party this week with a plea to get out the vote. There are so many parties clamoring for seats that no one group expects to take control of the parliament. Teresa Romanovska, a candidate for the front-running Democratic Union, rules out the chance of winning a majority of seats.
I think that 20%, it's all what can we do on this parliament.
These first free elections are almost certain to result in a coalition government, combining anywhere from 3 to 15 parties. It's widely accepted here that Poland will have to go through a few more elections before any one party emerges as a favorite. Anna Maria Tremonti, CBC News, Łódź, Poland.
In Greece, a normally quiet university looks more like a war zone after a night of rioting by students. 100 members of a leftist group set fire to a school building before police chased them off with tear gas. The students are demanding more money be spent on education. The CIA's dealings with the scandal-plagued Bank of Credit and Commerce International is under investigation by a Senate subcommittee. The agency's acting director, Richard Kerr, is scheduled to testify before the panel today. The CIA has been accused of using the bank to support its activities abroad and to funnel money to guerrilla groups supported by the United States. BCCI is charged with running an international network of drug smuggling, bribery, and money laundering. Arizona Senator John McCain will take the stand today in the trial of former Lincoln Savings and Loan kingpin Charles Keating. McCain is one of